Senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. 75 years ago, a brutal Russian dictator had pushed Russia to the brink of war. Soviet-sponsored coups had removed democratically elected governments in Eastern Europe. Communist revolutionaries were trying to seize control of Greece. Authoritarian forces threatened American allies across Europe. And the peace that we fought so hard to secure during World War II was in jeopardy. To meet these challenges, the United States and nations on both sides of the Atlantic that shared a democratic, free, and prosperous vision of the world came together and formed an alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. President Truman signed the treaty along with representatives from Canada, Belgium, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, and the United Kingdom. The heart of this treaty has always been Article 5. It states that, quote, "The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all." Mr. President, despite the incredible changes we've seen in the world over the past 75 years, the NATO alliance comes together for a summit here in Washington this week. The power of our solemn promise of solidarity is just as important as ever. Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has laid bare the danger Russia once again poses to Europe. From the Baltic states and Poland to Romania and Bulgaria, NATO member countries have seen what Mr. Putin's army is capable of doing in Ukraine. Targeting maternity wards in kindergartens, kidnapping and forcing children to relocate in Russia, executing innocent civilians with their hands tied behind their backs. For those people living in Moscow's shadow, the only thing standing between Russia's invasion and such horrific war crimes is NATO. This makes the strength of our alliance vitally important. I want to thank Secretary General Stoltenberg for his tireless efforts to guide the alliance through the last decade. The alliance is stronger today thanks to the recent additions of Finland and Sweden, thanks to the important financial contributions of member states, especially on the eastern flank, and thanks to the leadership of the Biden administration, in particular Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin. And because of the hard work of our military and political leaders on both sides of the Atlantic, today NATO is more unified, but there are concerns. Whether it is the former president of the United States who tells Russia to, quote, do whatever the hell that they want, or the delays in getting supplemental security funding for Ukraine passed in the House of Representatives earlier this year. Diplomats on both sides of the Atlantic are asking legitimate questions. Where is our alliance headed? Can Putin be stopped in Ukraine? Will NATO continue to have our backs? As the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I want to be crystal clear. The answer is and must be yes. NATO has been there for the United States in tough times, whether it's defending our skies after 9/11 or providing food and medical supplies to the people of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Now, more than ever, I believe the United States must stand shoulder to shoulder with our European allies. That is why I have backed efforts to support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. That is why I will never give up pushing for the passage of the supplemental security assistance and was glad that it was finally enacted. And that is why I'm supportive of the recent bilateral security agreement between the United States and Ukraine. It is also why I support for NATO to take an expanded role in coordinating the defense of Ukraine. Because no matter who is in the Oval Office, assistance to Ukraine must continue. Defense of Europe against Russian aggression must continue. Strengthening of the NATO alliance must continue. Above all, we must not give up hope that we can succeed. 75 years ago at the NATO treaty signing, President Truman said, For us, war is not inevitable. We do not believe there are blind tides of history which sweep men one way or another. In our own time, we have seen brave men overcome obstacles that seem insurmountable and forces that seem overwhelming. Men with courage and vision can still determine their own destiny. Mr. President, I am confident that NATO leaders, men and women, meeting here in Washington this week, possess both courage and vision. There may be debates about how NATO can best engage with our allies in the Indo-Pacific, like Japan and South Korea and Australia, or how to best to posture ourselves on NATO's eastern flank. But I am optimistic that NATO's future is bright, because there's no question what brings us together is our commitment to keeping authoritarian governments at bay, our commitment to democratic institutions and the protections of human rights, our commitment to peace and prosperity, our commitments to our values. So, Mr. President, as we welcome NATO leaders to Washington this week and celebrate the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance, I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support and protect NATO's military alliance that has made our world a safer place for over 7 decades, that has worked together to build a future that is free and secure and peaceful for generations to come.